Do you know what death is? And this is the way that I want to start the video today because we are going to study philosophically and in English, of course, the existential elements, death, boredom, loneliness, and fear as manifestations of meaning. So, with the help of the philosophy of language and the study of meaning in the dimension of metaphysical implications, we will finally put very sensitive topics about the transcendence of human mind, body, and existence out of the reach of superstitions and doctrines promoted by pseudosciences as astrology, ufology, parapsychology, numerology, etc. Religions, creationism, intelligent design, and some other activities that cannot be precisely verified by other critical perspectives. Also, not considering any experimental results and definitions from biology, physics, chemistry, and psychology, and all the contingencies of the scientific method. We'll define the most prominent human existential elements in terms of metaphysical, modes and possibilities of existence, and linguistical, naming, meaning, and term property attributions. Metaphysical notions being death, the lack of meaning, boredom, the search for meaning, loneliness, the attempt of meaning, and fear, the rejection of meaning. So I'm not only bringing new definitions for these concepts, but in terms of the science that is supposed to be the best science of all, the philosophy of language, which is the way to create what we call metaphysics nowadays. So the key words are meaning, existence, finitude, people, and life. Introduction. Tomasini gives us the biological definition of death, and this is relevant once we normally attribute life to those who apparently have physical body movements. So it's important, of course, although we are doing philosophy here, to see what the biology says, but you know that I don't agree with science. I have rejected science in 2010 when I've started to graduate in physics, but I've realized that not only the mathematical perspectives of physics in Brazil is not convincing because they are just to teach you about how to be an engineer, for example, and not a theoretical physicist. And because we know that science and mathematics are contradictory, and I'll talk about this in another paper. So let's do philosophy, right? But what is death to biology? A final event, an absolute state, part of dying process. Within this perspective, he also brings us the official definition of death proposed by the US President's Commission for the Study of Ethical Problems in Medicine and Biomedical and Behavioral Research, set up by Ronald Reagan. What does he say? An individual who has sustained either irreversible cessation of circulatory and respiratory functions, or irreversible cessation of all functions of the entire brain, including the brain stem, is dead. Thomason says that this definition, although very scientific, has problems in the preciseness of how much oxygen can be left to still consider someone alive, and it depends from person to person. And two, what would it be a real total brain failure because of the lack of the oxygen? He certainly appealed to the fact that concepts in general, according to the philosophy of language, are problematic to be rigid. Is a concept described by its sheaf of properties, like the descriptivist theory says, or only the group of proper names can actually pass the Kripke's possible worlds test? So I don't know whether you know about this, but we have this Saul Kripke guy who has tried to say that we cannot define the things in function of a sheaf of properties. So if I say that Aristotle is a philosopher, this is not necessarily trait of this guy, because he could have been a baker, for example. But this is not true, because we know that we must have at least a minimum description for something to be able to change any property whatsoever. So Aristotle must be defined as something like a minimum concept in order to change some other properties that he has. No? Thomasin, in his search for the definition of death, doesn't restrict himself to biology, but also describes death in a more conceptual level. So this is the guy now trying to be a philosopher. As a form of change in a particular kind of personal identity's loss, he says that there will be a social death, which is a relational or narrative change that happens as a consequence of real changes in the intrinsic nature of biological materiality. That means that when someone dies, one cannot provide any more changes in effect in one's social reality. We would have to reinterpret what we understand about this dead person as a linguistic and institutional being. Although this is closer to what we are doing here in this paper, Thomasin's first attempt to define death in the first paragraph already yields to philosophical problems, and the more conceptual attempt is rather euphemistic and sociological. We want to talk about death itself and what this exactly self is, of course. And like these definitions here are pretty poor. This is just a guy using some sciences and said, if you don't do anything significant in this society, you are deemed dead. But it's not an absolute explanation, and we must rely on philosophy of language and metaphysics to give the proper answer to this concept. Let us be a little more practical about the death topic. When someone enters into an airplane for the first time in his or her life, one realizes that there is something strange in that situation. One doesn't have any other option beyond two simple things, which are or to land safely or to die. Just to remind you guys that if I am dealing with a exclusive disjunction, I have to use or instead of saying either or. This person has never put him or herself into a situation like this before. He or she has always had more than two options. Everyone, of course, does eventually have to die and will someday be beyond saving, says Rachel Newer. So, do you believe that? There are some people in the common sense that say that the only certainty that we have in life is that we are going to die. But what is death anyway? These guys cannot simply say that they are going to die if they don't know what this is. And we'll see in this paper that they could never know. So this is not by definition a certainty. Well, if it were so easy to be sure of something, we would not have developed either any science as an attempt to describe the natural phenomenon, given as our very structure and condition for reality, or religion, given as dogmas, as an attempt to force explanation using faith. So we are not doing this here, right? We are not using science, neither faith. We are going to give you the truth, the philosophy itself, metaphysics, and philosophy of language. All these things that we have developed are not by chance. We fear death. We fear pain. We fear the unknown and the uncontrollable. What comes after and before death? Without any apparent reason to live, are we dead when we are bored? Why do people kill themselves when they don't feel welcome in the society or by a lover? Is fear a mere unpleasant feeling as a survival tool, or can we really learn something about ourselves from it? Right? Promises of an eternal life, harmony for everyone in the paradise, spirits, ghosts in their unfinished business, in the earthly plan, the good, the bad, right, wrong, the fair, taught by religions, the search for friends, love, a good job and traditional happy family, directly from TV bird commercials, the will for promotion, more money, capitalist dreams, taught by coaches. The control of our unconsciousness, child traumas, the unknown and bizarre, the ugly, the anxiety, taught by a psychologist, math and physics. All of this might not be ideal explanations for our biggest existential insecurities and doubts. Which I will argue, by the way, why am I talking about these four existential elements specifically? So let's not rely on mysticism, neither science. We are going to do, once again, the truth. By the way, I was talking about paradise here. There's no harmony in paradise because we ultimately would have discussions about concepts. If we are living a different kind of world ruled by God, we would still talk. And if we talk, we would fight for concepts because this is the dynamics of pragmatics of language. So it's impossible to have harmony in any place whatsoever where you can find where you can live in a paradise, right? All these concepts I've written in books. They are not formal as these papers here, and I'm trying to put all my old theses in these official publishings, right? This is the way that I have to prove that I'm not crazy. It is the rule of philosophy, more specifically the philosophy of language, naming, meaning, and term property attributions as they study of the conceptualizations problems themselves, including idealist metaphysical implications, to give the best answer for these fundamental problems of human life. Since no other known species, apparently, we never actually know, bothers about these profound questions which surpass worries about our own animal survival. It is about transcendence. Inspired mainly by the series of books by Lars Svensson, on this paper we will analyze and conclude with originality, using linguistical concepts, answers to definition of four specific existential issues. What is death, boredom, loneliness, and fear? And after answering this, we must then ask, why are they connected in a certain and unique way? And why these four specifically? So let's end this video for now, and I'll see you in the next one, and we will talk about these definitions specifically. Death is the biggest one, so I will probably talk about just two in the next video. Don't forget to share this video with your friends, and let's continue practice English, learning the best and the most fundamental things that we can use in philosophy. Don't forget, philosophy is the best thing of the world. See you next video then.